We started this series, We Have a Problem, to address the lack of diversity within the real estate development, construction, real estate, and design workforces, and to highlight folks who are creating change like Cedric, who we have on the call with us today. I just want to cover a few housekeeping rules, which I'll also drop in the chat as more people show up. We want to save all of our questions for the last 30 minutes of Q&A, so you can go ahead and just drop those in the chat bar. And once we get to that 30 minutes, I'll pull them up and begin to bring those to our moderator and our speaker for the evening. Just sit back and enjoy the robust discussion. I'm going to pass it over to Kimber.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Most of you are already familiar with the work we're doing at Local First Arizona. Very specifically, we're working to build a more diverse and inclusive Arizona economy. And the Forum program is aimed at looking at urban infill, oftentimes in TOD areas, and really tackling issues around displacement, design that is exclusionary as opposed to inclusionary, and really trying to ensure that diverse community stakeholders have a seat at the table as we talk about how we're designing our cities and how everyone's voice needs to be heard in the design professions, whether that be from a real estate perspective, an architecture perspective, or the development world. So we're very pleased tonight to have a conversation with Cedric Bobo. Cedric is the founder of Project Destined. You'll be sufficiently wowed as you learn more about the program that he's developed. He is touching lives and really changing the narrative around real estate. And Mr. Mark Stapp is going to be our moderator, although moderator may not be the right word tonight, Mark, because we really are just encouraging a conversation between Mark and Cedric that digs down into how Project Destined was started, who they're serving, what their plans are in the future, and most importantly, the big questions, what are they doing to move the needle around diversifying the world of real estate. So Mark, I want to thank you and the work that you do at MRED as a tremendous partner to Local First Arizona in ushering in these important conversations. And I'd also like to thank Deb from ULI for making the introduction to Cedric and for the great work that ULI is doing as well. Thank you for your partnership, and I look forward to the conversation. So Mark, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Kimber. First thing I'd like to do is thank Dominique for his good work. He has helped organize and fostered this dialogue over the last 6 months or so, and very much appreciate working with you and the good work that you've done. And without that, we wouldn't be here today at the end of this conversation. But I hope that when we do get done today, that it is the end of a conversation that we've organized, but the beginning of a movement that we can continue to push forward and can make a difference in the industry that we all are involved in. So, Dominic, thank you. We have been, over the past 6 months, as Kimber had noted, that talking about this. And, we started talking about it from the perspective of the design business predominantly. And the dialogue started down that road, and some of the other service providers, and talking about why isn't there more diversity and why is it so hard? And the conversation evolved into talking about real estate because those are service providers to real estate. And, one of the thoughts is that as we diversify the real estate industry, it will then also help to diversify those other service providers. So this, I think, has been an important discussion. Kimber, you had introduced Cedric You're quite an impressive person, Cedric, both as a human being and a rather humble human being, given some of the things that you've done. And I've grown to appreciate you. So I'm happy that you and I can have this conversation tonight. You came from a 20 some years as a investment manager at Carlisle, and saw a need and created Project Destined. And so one of the things I'd like to do first, so everybody who's on the call, if they're not fully familiar with Project Destined, has a better understanding of what it is, and a little bit of the history there, and a little bit more about you and your background.
Well, yeah, and first, I echo your thoughts on Dominic and Kimber. I think that in this moment, we really depend on the storytellers and creating the forums to keep these issues of diversity at the forefront. For me, and I describe Project S in this way, I always just wanted to be an owner. And I wanted to help other folks see a path to ownership. Whether you choose to pursue it or not, I think it's important to understand what's involved and be able to make that choice. So Project Destin, I think of it as an education platform that really leverages technology to create really new participants in ownership. I love doing it through real estate because I think it's such an incredible industry, and the built world, you can't escape it. And I wanted to use it, frankly, as a foundation for creating more owners. My own background, I'm the great grandson of a guy who bought 100 acres in 1890. He built a series of agricultural businesses using land, and my kids still play on that. And I think that from the day I was, old enough to recognize what he had done, I wanted to replicate it. And, even though my great grandfather had done it, I had no idea how to do it. And it's the same challenge that so many kids face today. They see their communities changing. They have no idea how to participate. Frankly, most adults don't know how to participate. They're just watching it, and they find it confusing. And so I didn't have a path to do it, and I got a bit lucky through education, frankly. I did a summer program in Harvard Business School. I spent a year abroad at Oxford. And I was, around people who were doing different things, and I'm always paying attention. So I had some friends who were doing investment banking, came to Wall Street, and I discovered there was people who use other folks' money to buy things. And I still remember the day that I learned that. And I wanted to be a part of it. So for the next 20 years, Mark, as you described, investing money, but I always bought apartments on the side. I just love the way real estate and investing and housing took me into these communities. And I got to know people in a different way as a provider of housing, but frankly, the foundation of building community. So the moment I got a chance to become an entrepreneur, I wanted to do two things. One, I wanted to go and invest in housing in different parts of the country. And two, I wanted to build an education platform that could get others into business. So I started in Detroit, with 15 high school students. And I'm proud to say now we train almost 400 every semester in 20 cities across the country. And we do everything from high school students to college students. And we've got adult programs with veterans. And we're launching our first program training moms through the Mom Project. And so for me, it's about this philosophy of ownership and then scaling it to impact as many folks as possible.
So why Detroit?
Yeah, so I saw a movie about Detroit, and I think it was like June 26th of 2016. My wife and I used to always go to this award show, and I saw this movie, and I was blown away that there was so much investment going into this city that has such an incredible history as a mixture of what's like Silicon Valley and Hollywood between Motown and the automotive industry, when you think about it. And yet there were many folks that left. It was largely African American, lots of new dollars coming in, very few diverse owners. And I was kind of in shock. And I'm super fanatical. So I think starting July 5th or 6th, I was in Detroit every week for almost 12 weeks. And we launched Project Destin in September. And we partnered with the city and a couple public schools. And we took students through this process of ownership. And I'm very much a believer in building parades, not pity parties. So as we taught students the philosophy of ownership. I hate this word gentrification. And I hate when people use it because it doesn't demystify what they're being excluded from. It just provokes anger. And so I wanted them to pitch me live deals in their city to say, hey, if you pitch me something that's of high quality, I'll buy it. And I bought a couple buildings. And that began sort of a path forward across the country. But I just still find Detroit amazing. We got a call 10 weeks ago from Detroit Public Schools. They gave us 2 weeks to put together a program with DPS, and we did it. And I did it because I just find that city just a wonderful platform to display what are some of the solutions in the country.
So you made a quantum leap there, right? You went to Detroit, you're fascinated by it, to boom, you launched Project Destin. Somewhere in there, the genesis of the idea emerged, right? So how did you go from, I want to be an entrepreneur, ownership, love Detroit, saw what's going on, I went back, I started Project Destin.
Yeah.
You're laying in bed one night staring at the ceiling and going, I think I want to do this with kids.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like I think my mother, and the same I do with my sons, my mother always indulged my entrepreneurship. And so I remember, I mean, like, heck, I've been doing this since I was like seventh or eighth grade. I mean, I would have ideas to sell candy in school, and my mom would take me to the store an hour later, and we'd have a business in place. That was just if I was willing to put out the effort and to come with an idea, my mom would mobilize it. And so she's always been that way. My wife is that way. My kids are that way. And so I think, when I left Carlisle, I spent 2 years, and I very seldom tell this, I spent 2 years where a family hired me and they met my salary. I made at Carlisle, and they said, we want you to go and help us build power plants in sub-Saharan Africa. So I spent 2 years doing that, but it was basically funding me investing in housing. And I just developed this belief that, like, if you match a decent idea with better execution, you can do incredible things. So I always just run through whole. So I got this idea of Project Destin that night with my wife, and I told my wife that night, I was like, Natasha, like, this is going to be a big platform. I'm just telling you, like, I can see it because there's these huge needs, and the only thing that's required is me to put my own capital at work to make it happen. And so from the idea, and I got to Detroit, and I realized this is a community that, as much as they're afraid of gentrification, they're not mobilized by someone who's doing what they would like to do. And I was like, all I gotta go and do is do what I was doing at Carlisle, which is go into random markets, develop a thesis, and go out and execute it. And so I just saw something that was really needed. And when I see that, my belief generally is that it's needed in multiple parts of the world. And so when I saw it in Detroit, there was a need. And I went to Memphis and there was a need. I went to Miami, there was a need in the Bronx. I just was like, this is something bigger than a Detroit feel good story. There's an opportunity here to really build, to the words you used earlier, a movement. And I was just passionate from the beginning, but I'm passionate about everything I do, to be candid.
Well, that's obvious. It exudes from you. Anyone who meets you or talks to you can tell that right away. You mentioned there's 20 cities that you're in right now. How many people have gone through this program and benefited so
Yeah.
far?
I mean, I think the most interesting numbers is, we started with 15 students in Detroit. We did probably 300 students in our first 3 years. And now we'll do 400 this summer, 500 in the fall. We'll have 60, 70 corporate partners, about the same number of academic partners. And I would guess 15, 1,600 students have gone through it thus far. My goal is to get to 1,000 every semester, is my goal. And so now we had a staff of 3 people. I only hire my former students. I only hire alums. We had 3 students last year. We've got 65 staff members now. We'll be at 100 by January because we're going to start launching in Europe, and I'm going to try Hong Kong. My goal is just to really leverage technology to just ramp up. I mean, we started doing Zoom-based training in 2019. We launched in LA, and we didn't do it because of the pandemic. Obviously, we did it because when you think about diverse folks, or you think about moms, or you think about military veterans, they really struggle to get to classes on any given night, even if it's the weekend. So transportation was a massive issue. That's what Detroit taught me, is that even if I had a great product that people needed, if I didn't fix the delivery system, I would always be dealing with subscale. And so I went to New York. We began to build momentum with lots of developers, but everything for us. We launched in LA in 2019. We did London simultaneously. And in LA, we did Zoom-based training, and then we did in-person experiences. And I thought the students did a higher quality job. There was lower attrition. And then we scaled it literally like the next semester. We had 14 universities all on Zoom. So when the pandemic hit, I told my wife, we're just going to invest a ton of capital and just blow it out and go from, I think we were like in 7 markets and we'll be at 20. But it was just really, to me, it was the passion, it was the clear need, and then it was really leveraging technology.
So how you're talking about barriers to entry, right? So
Mm.
transportation sometimes, just accessibility.
Yeah.
Technology is a barrier to entry for a lot of communities, a lot of people. Do you find that to be an issue?
Well, I think that for many people of diverse background, I think the first barrier is mental. Is that sometimes you don't believe that ownership of real estate is for you. You've been a user of real estate for so long, why am I going to go and spend 3 hours? We used to do it at like firms like Brookfield. Why am I going to go for 3 hours at Brookfield and be embarrassed because I don't know anything about this, right? What I have found is that while technology is a barrier, it's a lot easier to overcome than the barrier of leaving your home at 9 a.m. in the morning, going to an intimidating place that's big offices with people you don't know. Like that's a much bigger barrier. I mean, I have students today. I always tell this story. I have student in New York. Every time she spoke, there would be like this weird background noise, and I was I'm pretty intense, and I cold called the entire class. I was like, why is there continually background noise? Like, why can't you get somewhere quiet? And she, and it was like a grocery store, and she was taking our class from a closet at Whole Foods, and I was so amazed by it. I had a student who's 18. She started with me at 16, and she's doing our program again, and she was in her Starbucks uniform taking a break to do our team orientation. And so what I've realized is that people can figure out technology. And by the way, Zoom is better for most students because it's not as weird as coming into a space with a bunch of folks where I've got to navigate a social space, right? So I found Zoom to them has been a little bit easier to manage imposter syndrome. And so I think there is a technology barrier, but that's a lot easier than the mental barrier of I'm only going to be a victim of real estate, not a participant in it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I have found that when we had to jump to the pandemic and pivot, it changed the relationship I have with students. But in some regards, it allowed me to spend more time with them. And there is something that's still personal about it. But I found that I could easily engage with students on Zoom. And it certainly allowed them at different times of the day, at different points in their life, to be able to engage, like you said, much more easily. So I applaud that. And I do think as we get used to it, and especially this younger population, growing up with technology is not as big a deal.
No, but Mark, I will say one thing is that it makes education into a very clear content business. That is the challenge of it, is that there has to be pace and process different than in person. Because in person, and I fell victim to this, in person, I can win a personality battle with you. Is that I can give you zero content, but I can connect with you personally and make you feel great. And you will think, that was a great experience. I had a lot of fun. But the content I may have delivered, you may not have gotten it, right? But you had a great time. We spent time together. When you go to Zoom, is that you're a television show, right? In the sense of you got to have really compelling content and a follow through that keeps them engaged and coming back because they have so many choices. That is the difficulty, is it really that pace and process, I think is one of the challenges of really maintaining engagement.
You have committed participants, though. I mean, it sounds to me, as I look at some of the work that you've done, a lot of those people, if you're willing to do this from the closet of a Whole Foods or wherever you're doing, you have some pretty committed participants, and I'm sure that also helps overcome barriers in a lot of ways.
I attract fanaticals, right? Because I accept no shortcuts. And the beauty of Zoom for me is that if you don't show up, I go immediately to my waiting list, and the next class there's someone completely in your seat. And so it's just for me. I don't accept anyone who's lukewarm because you'll dilute the experience for other participants. And in real estate, I firmly believe it's an effort business that creates talent, not a talent business that simply rewards effort, right? I'm really big into my program rewarding those who demonstrate effort, and we will get to the talent piece, but it's the effort piece to me that's absolutely critical.
So where are some of your students, some of the people that have gone through this program now? Do you have any stories that you want to share about their success, how they've evolved?
Yeah, they're at all kinds of places. I mean, of my 65 staff members who are freshmen to juniors, I mean, they all have summer jobs and they work for me too, right? And they're everywhere from going to Blackstone to Brookfield to University Westfield to Cortland. I mean, they're going to all kinds of places, frankly, because I think that those firms see the rigor of what we put students through, and it emboldens them, frankly, to take a bet on some students, right? But I mean, I think my favorite stories are, like I've got a student, Miles Franklin, who started with me as a senior in high school. He then happened to come to George Washington University where I live. So every time I pitched someone, whether it was Judy Diamond or John Gray or A-Rod, he was always my pitch guy. He was always in the row with me. He's done everything from interning at Freddie Mac to sophomore year at Cortland. He was at Brookfield last summer. He's at Hines right now with Tommy Craig. And then he'll start at Cortland where they created a position for him, in September. And we're going to have lots of those stories because I start with folks who are as young as freshmen and I keep them engaged in real estate. The worst thing for me is they ever go to Goldman Sachs to do investment banking after spending the summer with me. I have to keep them engaged with real estate and make sure no one swoops in to steal them away because, in my view, their communities benefit from it, right? So there's lots of those stories. And now we put them all out on LinkedIn. Every kid that gets a job, we celebrate them because I want them to know that we're locked in this journey with them.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to get back to some of the internships in a minute. So I'm proud to say that we at ASU are going to be one of the partner universities with you this coming year. And I'm grateful for the generosity of some of our local real estate people, Gary Linhart, Joe Blackburn, pulling together the resources. Deb has been a big factor in making sure that this happens. And I think this will be the first teams that we have for Project Destin in Phoenix. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and so I'm proud to say that we are trying to help you be successful here in Phoenix, and by doing so, trying to help these individuals be successful and then help the community be successful. Equally proud of the fact that we have a partnership with Grambling State University, one of the great institutions in this country and a historically black college and university. And I was happy to be able to introduce you to the president. And we intend to engage with Grambling students with Project Destin and yourself through ASU. Are there other HBCUs? Are there other institutions you're engaged with as well?
Yeah, so we work with three big groups: large public universities, historically black colleges, and then I have a high school program. So we work with about 12 HBCUs. We're launching with Greystar in Charleston now this fall, and we'll be with South Carolina State. I think what I'm most proud of is that some of those HBCUs, the kids actually get academic credit for doing it, which makes it easier to take the risk. But I would be shocked if we weren't at double the number of HBCUs, by this time next year. And we've got firms like Related, where they're sponsoring like an HBCU program, where they're backing students out of Morehouse and Spelman and Howard, and same with PGIM. So I think more and more what we're seeing is some of these large corporates, you show up at these HBCUs and they don't know you, so it's tough to get traction.
Yeah.
But we can take them into those places because we're there every semester, and consistency really matters in under-resourced communities. Johnny come lately is very scary to them because they're worried that the moment that life gets busy again, you walk away. And so we guarantee them that we're going to be there for multiple years when we come.
Yeah, I'm very cognizant of that. Showing up at Grambling, it's been a great opportunity for us. I'm very pleased to be able to do it, but
Mm,
I do find some reluctance among their faculty. It's like, who are
yes.
you? Like, who are you? And so, where'd you come from?
Yeah.
All of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're now the biggest thing in town? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're doing will be made better through our engagement with Project Destin, and hopefully that also provides a not only a better opportunity for these students, but also a sense of comfort that this is real, and we
Yeah.
intend to try and make a real difference.
Yeah,
So
I think it's really, I mean, I think it's really important, and we're doing something similar in Dallas where we've been in conversations with SMU, and we've told them the best way to do it is you also bring in Prairie View, or you bring in Paul Quinn, like you bring in HBCU, because there's so much talent that could benefit from your incredible real estate programs. But the thing that's critical is that they know you're going to be there consistently. So we guarantee them, regardless of the funding that comes from supporters, if we can find the supporters, my wife and I are going to support it because they need to know you're going to be there multiple years because they're making a commitment with their students when they start putting talent in that pipeline, and they don't want to shortchange them.
yeah, well, I look forward to working with you at Grambling in any way that you think we can help you. We're very interested in doing that. Um, you were talking about internships for your
Mm,
students, and
mm,
you've done an amazing job of connecting with these major corporations, these
mm,
powerhouses, if you
mm,
will, big corporate entities. Great opportunities for sure.
mm, mm,
Absolutely no doubt about it that some of these students are getting these great opportunities.
mm.
Is it possible that to get these opportunities in smaller communities and smaller organizations as well? I mean, Kimber, this is sponsored by Local First Arizona. I mean, we're talking
Mm.
about grassroots individuals where there's a lot of need. You
Yeah.
talk about the dirty word of gentrification, which is displacement of
Mm.
merchants and owners. And are there opportunities to drive this down to that level?
No, without question. I mean, so for me, the thing I care least about is getting four black kids a nice summer gig at any institution. You need scale. I mean, the reason why I'm racing towards 1,000 a semester is that it creates a robust talent pipeline that can move around the country. So the reason why you see a lot of the larger firms announcing internships with our students today is because they've got the systems and processes to put in place virtual internships or in-person internships. They can move with the system. They also have, larger HR groups that can bring these students in and manage all the stuff, right? But for us, it's all about just producing the talent. We've got an online community we built that allows folks to, post jobs and go after talent seamlessly. And I think that works just as well for small organizations as large. I think the one thing that I push every firm on is, everyone wants the talented rising senior who can come in and be plug and play. Like that's not how you really build a diverse pipeline. So we start as early as freshmen all the way through seniors. We've got freshmen, at CUNY who are going to work at Related for the summer after we train them. So if you want to get to women and other diverse folks, you've got to start early. So we'll work with anyone who's open-minded about giving internships to sophomores and juniors alike, because I think that is what's required to transition the mindset and experience set of students getting into real estate.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things we've thought about, Kimber and I were talking about this, is simply sending people to big organizations. They have great experiences, but are they able to then translate it into me? I'm able to do this. I'm able to own. I'm able to
Yeah,
get the capital to do
yeah,
it. Um,
yeah. I mean, I mean, what we try and do is get the students in early. And the reason why, candidly, I teach them ownership is one, because I want them to see themselves and the neighborhood differently. But also, I want you to see the entire supply chain of what's required to become and build a business, right? I want you to see the folks who buy the land, entitle it, and develop it. I also want you to see the folks who are the property managers who maintain it and help you produce the cash flow. And I think if you can see that supply chain of where capital comes from, where it goes, and the fact that it requires a return, which is what every small entrepreneur thinks about too, I think it makes you a better employee, because when you arrive at a small firm or large firm where people do so many roles within a small organization, I think it makes you more aware of all the things that are involved if you've gone through our work. Uh, I think that orientation, big companies can't do that as well because it's really reticulated. But our job is to try and give you that perspective.
Yeah. And getting them to bring it back to their own communities, I
Yeah.
would think is important too. I mean, I have a view of real estate that's not, it's a little bit different than, the finance folks, where they see
Mm,
real estate as a financial vessel only,
mm,
right? It's a way
mm,
to build wealth. It's the physical assets of a
mm.
community. And when the community doesn't own their own assets, they don't have control, they don't have self-determination.
Yeah.
And critical that they bring this back to their neighborhoods, back to their communities,
Mm,
and practice what they're learning, um,
yeah.
to be able to
Yeah.
now say, listen, we own our neighborhood. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I mean, so if you look at, so we do, like this summer, we'll have, you know, 300, 400 students, and they'll look at a bunch of different deals. Many of those deals are small value add deals where you're buying anything from 8 to 10 to 20 units. And what I tell students is that, yes, you have to understand how to buy a duplex, but you also need to understand that when you buy a 10-unit building, that's when you can actually hire a property manager with you. And that's when you get non-recourse debt. And the amount of capital you got to come up with is a little bit different, right? So for me, it's about helping them think through, yes, it's great to do a 200 unit building. Let's start with something smaller just so you can understand it and make some sense of it. It's in your neighborhood. But let's not start so small where you can't get scale. Like if you go and do a ton of 2 and 4 plexes over time, what happens is that it requires so much of your time and you can't get any of the scale operations. So for me, it's about teaching them about those tweeners so they can build up the reps and then think about what they want to buy in their community.
mhm. So you mentioned teaching them to be owners, which is
Mm,
critical, right? You
yes.
you were blessed with the fact that you had a grandfather that owned, and so you at least had some evidence of what ownership is, right? And you were
Mm,
blessed with parents who imbibed you with some of that same mentality.
mm,
Not everybody does, and the desire to be the owner is like, great, I want to go be an owner. It's really
mm,
hard, right? It's
mm,
hard because you need capital.
mm,
Is there it takes a lot of capital. So is it possible to
mm,
align capital with these young entrepreneurs?
mm,
Another step in the process here
mm.
where we can align them and say, you know what, not only do you have a good idea, we think it's a valuable idea. And so we can line the capital up and let's go do it. Let's go make a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Well, I think so. My inspiration was my great grandfather, right? So I never met him. But I think that, but I think all growing up, I grew up with the narrative that I was supposed to own, I think more importantly. So, I mean, I played on that land in the summer. My grandmother told me stories about this guy and how he maintained that land during the Great Depression. And so I think I had a personal narrative that was about parade building, not about having pity for yourself, right? And by the way, there are lots of obstacles as a brown dude in Mississippi, but I think I just always thought, despite them, I was still meant to own. I mean, I just thought that, right? And so I think for anyone, I always tell my students is that I can teach you many things about real estate. I can't teach you you deserve to win at life. You've got to decide that for yourself. Once you decide that you are meant to win, that is a lot more difficult than raising capital, right? I do think capital is challenging, but I think developing the mentality that you are meant to attract capital is much more challenging. for folks in my community. And so I really focus on building that mentality that you deserve to win. And frankly, I tell my students, there's not a rich person in the world that me or A-Rod can't get to. And so if you have a good idea, we will get you that person. So, and I tell them that because I also think it's true that, you know, there's a lot more capital than good ideas. The question is not if you have access to capital. The question is if you have access to people with capital. I
Yeah.
don't need to have a dime or need to have a bank next to me. What I need is Jamie Dimon to say, "Sir, that's a good idea. Let me put you in front of folks who can help you get capital." So what I tell my students is that get to know people through my program, through our projects. That is more important than the cap rates or the NOI, is the fact that the person who taught you works for the CEO of Global Debt for PGIM, and they have a lot of capital. So if they see your effort in this work, maybe they'll reward that effort by helping you build a set of relationships that rewards later on. So I really start from the mentality piece, Mark, because I think they've heard a lot enough about how tough it is. We have to understand that, like, well, I think it's a lot tougher to get to be an NBA player, and you think you can do that. So why don't I teach you something that actually is a lot easier than that?
Yeah. I think you uttered one of the great understatements of all times just before. There's a lot of barriers in Mississippi to a brown dude. Um,
Mark. I grew up. My mom had this philosophy of just like, it's great when you know who's against you. It's the people who are lukewarm and in the middle. That's much more challenging. Mississippi was easy for me. Working in private equity, trying to buy stuff around the world, that's a lot more different. That's a lot more challenging because they're more sophisticated about their indifference to my success. In Mississippi, they're straightforward.
this is a good point. Yeah, it's the people who pat me on the back and say, "I'm so so good to see you. Glad you're here. We're gonna help you." That I worry about the most.
And so, Mark, I'll tell you one that I think is worse. And we have a lot of folks who do great work for us, but they have these weird biases and they don't know how to manage them. And I remember once this guy, I sent him the introduction to a young woman who was going to help us, do some work. And she had not been working for us very long, so she was figuring it out. And I asked him how the meeting went, and his response was, where'd you find her? And it was one of those moments that just kind of guts me because it was like you were just setting her up to be unsuccessful. And I think a lot of folks who look like me have just gone in environments and you show up the first day and people say, "Where did you come from? Where does this guy come from?" And it just sets you up at this massive deficit because people are looking for your flaws. And I just told the guy straight up, I said, like, I'm not in the business of finding flaws. I said, I have a hyper growth business. I need to find people who I can train to win. And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to build is this really virtuous machine that just gets people from here to there through just a ton of effort.
Yeah. So you just mentioned you're building your growth machine, right?
Mm.
And what do you think your barriers are to that growth, to that success? I mean, do you think that there's yeah, so organizations, right, will grow logarithmically, right? So all of a sudden they start to flatten out when you get to a certain level. What do you think your barriers are? What do you need to overcome, or do you need help with?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest ones takes place this summer, right? Is that so much of my delivery mechanism is that I have just a tremendous number of young people who help me co-deliver it, and they value this brand as much as I do because they get jobs through it, right? So a big part of it for me is I have all these program managers who are students, and then I take them and I hire them, and they train other students. So one of the biggest challenges of scale and going from spring to summer is that we doubled in size over 2 months, and we introduced a whole new technology platform. So the big challenge for me was that I had trained like 150 students. I needed to hire 60 people, right? So I had to take some risk on people and improve my training and my internal training. Like that's been a real challenge for us. But the uplift is that I'll have 400 students that go through it, and it's going to be so much easier to take some subset of them and get them trained because of the scarcity I face today. So I would say one, it was having enough talent that I could transition into program managers, and then having a hotel style quality training program that we're developing now. I mean, those were the big ones, and that's what my wife and I are spending a lot of time investing in now.
So your wife's name is Sasha?
Natasha,
Yeah. So
she's
she's got to be a remarkable person to be working with you on this. The two of you have to be incredibly busy. What's her role?
well, I mean, my wife's like an armchair quarterback. She doesn't have to do it because I'm kind of fanatical. Like that wouldn't be a robust conversation. But she gives me a ton of helpful feedback, and more importantly, about my wife's a mechanical engineer just like me, but she's a product designer. And in so many ways, she saw earlier than I did, you're just developing this product. And she's like, everything you do has to think about 1,000 students, not 15 students or 30 students or 100 students. So every bit of our process, she's always making me work back through it from the standpoint of a designer, right? Everything from the accounting systems we use to when we designed our first e-learning curriculum, we used graffiti animation that I'd seen in a Jay-Z New York Times op-ed. And she's like, that will appeal to people in mass, old, young, and that's what it's done, right? And she sat there with me, kind of, sketching it out. And so I think from my perspective, she's just been our sort of chief architect of helping me think through how you design an education product so it meets lots of people's needs. And our next goal is the adult market, right? When we've done it with veterans. Veterans has been great, but next is with moms, right? And again, a group that think about using real estate, and now I've got to transform them to thinking about really managing and owning real estate. So we're doing that now. It's our next big opportunity.
So yeah, can you expand on the moms program a little bit? I mean, have you launched
Yeah,
that yet?
yeah. So we've announced it. So um, our program today, um, strangely, it's 60% women in terms of my students. My staff are 70% women, and we've never had a women in real estate program. But because we really talk about ownership through real estate, it's always appealed, to women like my mom. Um, yeah, I wanted to go even stronger into that because there's a big lateral market opportunity. You can't solve diversity through simply college programs. You've got to start focusing on lateral hires as well. And I wanted to do something that involved women in real estate. And then I was on the phone with the global head of HR at JLL, and she just randomly mentioned the Mom Project. And I got that same feeling of when I heard about Detroit, and I was like, okay, this is first of all great branding, and I was like, second, it's like who wouldn't want to support a mom, right? And so I had a call with them, and they told me we can't do anything this year, and I was like, yes, you can. And they were like, no, we really can't. I was like, no. And they were like, when do you want to do it? This was April. I was like, I want to start in May. And and we launched the application May 28th, right? And so we'll take 20 moms through a program. We will teach them project management, property management. JLL has already identified jobs for every single person once they're done. If they learn the curriculum, their interview. So our curriculum this time will be less about the pitch competitions and more about giving them projects to help them prepare for interviews. I'm a big believer that if you can create and engage in a project that is directly connected to a job, when you show up in an interview, shockingly, you have the skills and language to get that job, right? People have 45 minutes to make a decision. They can't do that much diligence, right? All I got to do is get you ready for your moment. And so we'll take these moms to the program, all virtual, all on Saturdays. And then we already have the job specs from JLL for the opportunities that they'll interview for, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. So you've got veterans, you've got students, you've got moms.
Hmm.
Who's left?
Well, I mean, we did a middle school program with Gray Star in Durham, and we'll do more of that. So my model is I go into college, then I go to high school, and then I just take whoever will let me go forward, right? But the college students become my workforce, and they train everybody else because I think they're just so moldable.
Yeah.
If you have strict training parameters and emphasis on strict, where we do all day Sunday meetings where they're getting trained and then they go out to battle during the week, right? So we have to be we got to do the same model that sports does. I mean, like think about sports is so nuts. Like all these kids play all these sports with for things that they're never going to do when they graduate, right? But it's because it's ever available, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
and sports has demystified the exact way to get to become a pro athlete. Little league, middle school, high school, AAU, college, pros less than 0.001% will do it, but it's so clear how you do it and it's ever available. I want to do that with real estate education. It is going to be ever present and available to you. All you have to do is want to do it.
So you mentioned you launched in London, right?
Mm.
You want to go to Asia?
And we'll launch.
Uh,
We have an exchange student from Paris that's in our New York program now, and she will launch Paris for us in the fall. But she'll do it. It'll almost be like so. She'll come to the U.S. and learn our program, right, virtually, and then some of my HBCU students will work with her in launching Paris, which will be a great kind of balance. And then we work as one of our partners, and part of what I want to do with them is go into Asia because they've got great presence there. And so I would suspect we'll have something in Asia by next summer.
yeah. So culturally, I mean, real estate plays different roles in different cultures, and you've got
Yeah.
different laws, you've got different
Yes.
um, systems, etc.
Mm.
How do
Mm.
you make those
Mm.
adjustments with
Mm. Mm.
people?
Mm. I just try and mess up like really in a really small way really quickly. So my goal is always just to screw it up in as many ways as possible using my existing model with no one's capital. I won't take a single sponsor into Paris. I didn't take one into London. I make every mistake on my own dime. We're very quiet about it, and then I'll scale. It's actually no different than Detroit. I didn't take a penny from anyone until we got to our fourth market. But by then, I had seen what could work across multiple markets. So in Paris, our French student told me, she said, you can't go in talking about competition. You can't talk about wealth. You can't talk about class. You just got to be more modest about it. And I was like, that only works for rich people. It doesn't work for you. I was like, you should be talking about being competitive. You should be talking about trying to be rich. Else you're just going to work for them all the time. And I told her, I said, I will adjust to certain things. I will never adjust to pushing students to have the desire to become owners in whatever their culture is. And so I will go into all those markets. First, my wife and I will fund them completely. And then if it works, we'll go to our big corporate partners and then we'll go to middle market and smaller.
Some of them are going to be interesting markets to try and get yourself embedded in.
Yes, 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 yes.
uh,
So, Mark, the one thing you should know is that when I was at Carlisle, I didn't buy anything in the U.S. Everything I bought was in Europe and Asia, and I
no,
built 2 billion. I built $2 billion of ships in China, and I almost lived there, right? And their culture is, just fascinating. But the thing that they love most is when you're curious about their culture, right? And if you express curiosity, they will teach you the ways to win in their culture. That's actually not so different than Detroit. I went to Detroit telling them I was going to go and buy real estate and I was going to build like some community center attached to like the vacant land. And this guy told me, he was like, man, like, why don't you not do that and just teach kids how to make money, how you make money? That's what we did. And so I think that China and Paris and all these markets,
yeah,
will tell me the same thing. But what
yeah.
they want to see is that I give my own personal time and treasure first to understand their market, and I'm willing to make mistakes and listen to them.
So when you go into another culture, another country,
Mm,
do you just kind of like show up, or do you have a
mm,
champion that you know that's
mm,
there that helps
mm,
you, that at least
mm.
provides a little bit of intro?
Yeah, I mean, so what I do, I think it's tough to get people to lay out their network if they don't see that you're serious, right? So I'll use Los Angeles for an example. You know, Brookfield said they would help me. I needed more than Brookfield to do it in the way I wanted in LA. And so what I did is that I live in DC, is every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., I would get on a flight in Baltimore. I would land, I would do back-to-back meetings, and I would take a red eye back to the East Coast that night. And what I was trying to do is show people in LA that every Tuesday I was going to be there. And by being there every Tuesday, they always knew they could meet with me whenever. And it felt like I was there all week because I was just always there predictably. It's the same strategy I had in like West Africa when I was trying to build a power plant. I just built a regular pattern of being there. And by the fourth time you're there, people really begin to give you their network. Same model I use at Carlisle. So when we launch in Paris or we launch there, I will have young people on staff because people want to see the product that I'm working with. But I will just go there an absolute ton until they begin to have some degree of trust.
Mhm. So, and I want to open up to anybody else who has questions. I'm just enjoying talking to you. So, is there something that even today you're going, this is just driving me nuts. This is something I really just got to go figure out. I haven't quite figured it out yet. That you really want to get done.
I mean, I really want my high school program to be the same size as my college program, you know, for reasons that are going to be challenging because large companies can't get the ROI on a high school student that they can on a historically black college student because it's better press and better quick return on interns. But if we don't fix the high school problem, we can't solve the college problem. And so one of the things that you know, I'm spending a lot of time on is how do I personally fund some of those high school programs to show the kind of connectivity. And now I've got high school students who are getting internships and flowing to my college programs, right? So that's one thing I'm really working on now. I'm doing something with Claremont McKenna this fall where the school actually hired us and I'll train 10 students and all 10 of those students will then go and teach with me at a high school, almost like Teach for America for real estate, right? And so I'll start doing more of that with some of my colleges where I'll say to corporates, fund them twice, basically, what you're really funding is a high school student. And so I'll start building more programs like that where it's almost like Peace Corps style, right? Or something like that, or Teach for America style, where you'll do one semester where you learn, second semester you'll teach with me.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a
Those
really
are,
good way to leverage.
yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean, that keeps me up at night because it gives me more scale. And imagine if I have an army of like high school students and college students who have the same exact training,
Yeah, yeah.
right? The ability to scale is just become pretty easy.
Um,
Cedric, Mark,
yeah,
do
go
you
ahead.
mind if I?
No,
Um,
no, please.
So my question is not necessarily how you build it, but I'm really intrigued by your internal drive. And you just said, you know, something keeps you up at night. How do you stay healthy? You know, I hear about, you know, the flying across the country every day with just this incredible momentum. And you get up every day with the same amount of drive. And how do you give yourself space to come down from that and be creative and stay healthy?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that you know, it's about just I mean, for me, it's always been I don't have many friends. I have my wife, I have my children, I have my close family, my mom. So I've never been one that I have like 30 friends that I have to kind of manage. I've kind of made kind of my you know, my focus has always been kind of my wife, my family, and the work that I do. And just minimizing that focus does two things for me. One, there is I don't have as many distractions, right? But then the second is mentally it keeps me strong because I also am not dependent upon the confirmation of some massive set of people, right? Like I don't start anything thinking like, man, I wonder if they're going to be disappointed because I left Carlisle. I mean, I could care less if someone thinks that, right? It doesn't factor into my equation, because as long as my wife and my children are okay with it. So for me, mental health and physical health has been about, frankly, just trying to manage my self-esteem, right? And not outsourcing how I feel about myself and my work to others. That's always been really important to me. It helps that I'm an only child and doing it, but really, it's I got an amazing system in my wife and my children where we're just really locked in on what is our mission.
Do your children, how old are your children? I'm just, if I
I've
can ask.
got uh, I've got 14 and I've got twins that are 10. So my 14-year-old does a lot with me. So he and I are reading this book, my favorite new book, Grit, now together. You can't see it here, but he's like my guy. He's an entrepreneur. He has a business partner in Germany where they're building something. He builds like servers and stuff like that. But I think all of my kids are fairly entrepreneurial, and so while they aren't directly engaged in Project Destin, there's the same energy in our house of being hyper creative. So our space is a pretty creative space. And if people see that you're kind of thinking, they kind of let you think, which is kind of driven by my wife. And, that creative space, Kimber, I really demand it. And I tend to get out. I'm up at 4:30 in the morning before everybody gets up. And I'm just sitting there just thinking about problems, right? And if I say I have any strength today, is that we have so many corporate partners that have some faith in our execution. They just come to me with problems. And I spend my morning just thinking about not just the solution, but how does the solution tie into my current business? So I think the failing you have when you first start is that you try and build multiple products that satisfy different customer end markets, right? Well, now I've made them all connect together, right? So my high school and my college product are completely connected and supporting one another. My college product, they are now the program managers helping guide my mom project work. And so for me, it's being able to connect the work. So I'm not building a bunch of disparate products, but they connect together.
What's your succession plan? I mean, where do you ultimately, what's your ultimate here?
Yeah, so what I'm spending a lot of time now doing is, and I saw it with Carlisle's founders when it was like the three of them, and they thought about how they were. I think also, by the way, having a chance to watch Carlisle being built, I spent 2 years working for the now former CEO, getting them ready for IPO, and seeing how they built the machine was incredibly powerful. And honestly, like the machine I'm building and the way I'm doing it, city by city, market by market, is exactly what David Rubenstein did. Um, but the other thing is that, when they thought about succession planning, they didn't try and find a replacement for them. They tried to find a set of systems and people who could take on different roles. So, my wife and I have made a pretty big investment in technology and a platform that does a lot of the connectivity piece that I used to do. Like I would connect person to a job, all of this kind of stuff. Like now that's all done through our technology platform. And now I've just built out an operations team, which is a bunch of financial mathematics majors from a few of our schools. And we think about automating absolutely everything. If it can be automated, we automate it, right? And so I haven't tried to find like a COO or like some. I've tried to find an operations team that take on a variety of roles. And now they drive me by saying, Cedric, we can't do it that way because we can't scale that. And that's the wonderful thing about young people, is that an older person sometimes takes a job and wants to do that job. A younger person is just so focused on like, how do I get to a solution that makes my time more efficient, that operations team is really driving and propelling us forward. So from a succession standpoint, Mark, I think that I will have someone that does like the storytelling role that I have over time, but there'll be a big operations team underneath it that really focus on operating our programs.
So what can we do to help you?
Oh, I mean, you're doing it. I mean, like, none of this works if you don't have talent, right? Like, I mean, like, the scarce resource. I mean, here's the thing, is that, like, when you look at what I do from a pity perspective, you cannot scale that. It's just based upon people's charity. And it's a terrible, terrible model because it doesn't respect their talent and their effort, right? So all I am doing is building a scaled apprenticeship program, right? But it requires a ton of talent. And so, like now, I've got a new head of academic partnerships, and we were going through how much talent we need for the fall and changing our processes to see talent all year round. So, what you're doing with Grambling is amazing because it helps me work with you to see your talent that's diverse, that needs some experience that could help them, but also build this pipeline of Grambling, all of these engineering students or finance students or accounting students who didn't know there were jobs in real estate. We can now bring them into this platform. So I think that the partnership with you all is transformative because now I use it as a model of just getting to talent. You got a great real estate program, but a big student body who don't study real estate. Also, all these HBCUs. And so, like that's a whole, all I see is like, man, that's talent into my pipeline. And I'm desperate for that.
So we're desperate to give it to you. I would say we're certainly very interested in giving it to you. I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions for Cedric?
I have a question. So how do you, what does marketing look like for you? How do you find these participants? That's one of the things that coming out of June of last year. I of course, being a person of color and a woman, recognize the lack of both in the industry, especially in the market. And what I identified was that kids didn't even realize that this was a thing, right? I didn't learn about it. Well, actually, I was introduced to it because I went to a prep school here for high school, right? So all of my friends' fathers were in commercial real estate, but had not happened, I wouldn't have known that this is actually an industry to enter. So what I decided to do was to work with junior achievement, right? In the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So I've been participating in JA Inspires, just to let them know that this is a thing, right? Think about this. And then I have a 10-year-old who we do highest and best purpose for vacant land on infill as just a fun thing in the car. So, but she does that with her friends, right? But one of the things was, these kids just didn't even know this was a thing. How do you find them when they're young so that they know that this exists?
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of it, you got to be an evangelist for your purpose, right? I mean, I think one of the flaws in people's thinking about diversity is that they assume because you have this great educational product that all these kids are going to take you up on it. I just think it's not true because what is the ROI they're betting on? Like, who are they looking at to say there's a return on investment by doing an MRED program or an MS-RED program or doing a college real estate degree or doing a high school program? Like, where is the proven ROI on that, right? And so for me, when we launch in a market, like I'm kind of crazy. Like I find my student academic team, and I say to Miles Franklin, who by the way himself one of my students, who's like a second year at George Washington, I say, Miles, I need 40 Howard students, and I said, you got to go find them. Here's a set of marketing materials. I'll give you my Rolodex. You go get it done. And what Miles realizes is that, hold on, I can meet all these people who could one day give me a job by using your Rolodex to go and build this. And, I'll ask 10 students to do that. 3 of them will do it, but I get my 40 students. So I think our success has been I am using the relationships of students I have trained who have gotten jobs to then go out to the marketplace to then go and recruit other students. And by the way, they don't want anyone who isn't going to respect the brand to be a part of it. So not only do I get the volume of students, I get the quality because they don't want them to ruin a good thing for them, right? So, but the thing is, I'm doing it consistently. Like I'm always in the market for talent. And I'm always telling them their talent. I'm always telling them I need them. But if they give 100%, here are some of the outcomes, right? But I think the flaw is that if you think you got some great program that like a kid gives a crap, they do not. You got to persuade them.
I need Miles to go to Grambling with me. I do. Because it's so slow to get them to respond to things on the administrative side. It's just
Yeah.
painfully slow.
Yes.
So
No,
we'll talk about that separately.
but Mark, it's you're dealing with what I'm describing at the student level, at the institutional level, is that they have never seen like they've never seen your sincerity before. And so, and by the way, everyone's showing up now, right? And so I was on the phone with Walker and Dunlap. They have a program at North Carolina Central University, and I was asking them, how did they pick NCCU? And they were kind of walking through the process. But then you got to think, every big company went and sought out HBCU, and they were overwhelmed. And I just think that they're just, they don't know how to do it in the right way. You've got to bend over backwards. It's just the strange reality.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'll do whatever that takes.
So just I want to just piggyback off of that really quickly. When I come into a situation in that very similar vein, I come in like a force of nature. So I had to learn how to scale my asks so that they are achievable and not overwhelming, or like just little small movements, things that in the real estate world, we would ask for these almost strides. You had to kind of step back until they caught up with your pace, because otherwise just like a whirlwind coming through. And you're right, they're not used to that level of attention.
Yeah. But let me be very clear. Not that they're not used to it. They're skeptical of your sincerity, right? I mean, because they're used to people caring about them, but they're used to different people caring. Goldman Sachs has been coming in there for ages at FAMU. Real estate hadn't come there. And so when I show up, I've got to show some proof that there is an ROI, right? And Mark, I would tell you, like our success at some schools like FAMU is that they gave students academic credit for doing our program, right? They co-signed with us, but we just tried everything possible relentlessly, to use your force of nature, metaphor. But our industry is so incredible, it's worth it.
I have to muster my force of nature. Or get Karen to do it.
And it's also, Mark, I must say, the thing I've learned is that it's the force of nature, and finding that one person who may not be the most senior person who can unlock the keys. For me at every school, like the challenge around scaling this on the talent side is that just because their title would suggest they have currency with students is not true, right? And so for us, it was, really working our way through the system using both social media as well as direct engagement to get to someone who could care. And that person was not always obvious out of the gate.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions for Cedric?
It's been fun. Thank you all.
Listen, thank you so much for taking your time. It's very late there. We appreciate the amount of time you've given us. I really appreciate the sincere conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I do mean that. I hope you know I'm sincere.
Oh my God! Yeah. We wouldn't be on this call.
No. But I think we all appreciate exactly what you're doing. We are wowed by you, and you don't do it to be wowed. I know that, but we are wowed, and we want to find a way to be part of your wow.
I agree. We're looking forward to providing mentors, ULI mentors for your program, Cedric.
Yeah.
No, that would be great. I mean, for us, ULI is this powerful machinery and partner, and we haven't unlocked how to do it yet. We're trying, but it's been so remarkable just to see the opportunity, and I'm hoping that Phoenix can maybe be the case study for how we do it, because between the partnership with ASU and with Grambling, and Deb, just your advocacy for us, I think that there is a real chance for this to be the model. We now just got to go out and do it. And when I say the model, it's not just the model for the college program or the high school or the adult program, but it's integrating them, because in scale, you really have power and influence and ability to maintain it. So I'm hopeful that all of the products that we care about at all age levels can really come to bear in Arizona.
We're going to try.
Yes.
Oh, we will.
Wonderful.
Thank you all. Kimber.
Cedric,
Thank
have
you
a
all.
good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Cedric.
Mark, thanks
All right,
very much.
Yep.
And Dominique, thank you as well. Cedric, have a great night.
All right, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Dominique, be well.
Good night.
Thank you, Dominic.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Cedric.
Good night.
Lorenzo, so Deb, don't hang up yet, okay? Because I have a thought. It has been very difficult for me to try and get Grambling administrative folks to move.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is the ULI chapter in Louisiana worth having a conversation with about what we're doing and see if we can help?
It's possible, and I've met one of the former chairs from Louisiana, but they're very small. It's not as a robust district council as we are, but it's worth a shot. I can look into that and see. I in fact, off the top of my head, I can't remember who the staff folks are down there. But I'll look into it.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether if nothing else, it's like, hey, we want you to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. So we're playing in your backyard now.
Yeah.
And G, can you help us? Because
Yeah.
we really want to be able to succeed I need 10 students from Grambling. That's all I need.
Right.
And see if we can use their involvement down there too.
Yeah. What I can do is pull the member list. And see some of the leaders and the folks who are engaged there, and maybe there's a bridge somewhere.
Yeah, that may be helpful. That would be good too.
Happy to do that.
Thank you. And I saw your note about Wayne calling.
It was so fun. Yeah. So I chatted with him for a few minutes. So we're getting together next week, Thursday morning for breakfast.
Okay.
And I told him that the three, he goes, is it just you? Not that I just want just you, he's like, but that's okay. That's okay. So in September, I said in September, because I'll be back like the first week of September, probably.
Yeah, good. God love them. So Lorenzo, I have volunteered you.
Good. This is incredible. I was going to ask, what is his motivation or vision for maybe bringing this program to Arizona or Phoenix?
Well, what was his motivation?
No, what is his vision for it? It sounds like he's motivated to do something here, bring Project Destin here.
Yeah.
I'm working with the group in South Phoenix that really is just craving a path to ownership and understanding. It seems very aligned. I wish they were on this call tonight. They're not, which usually the 3 or 4 of them are.
Yeah,
well, and Dominique, you recorded this so they could watch the recording of this.
We gotta share it.
Yes.
Yeah, but the other thing too is what happened was, I think it was Gary Linhart attended a webinar meeting, and Cedric was a speaker at this meeting, and so Gary was all over it.
Yeah, of course.
And so Gary and Joe Blackburn are reaching out to folks to sponsor the launch in September, so that he wants to do a team of like 20 students or something in September. So do it in the fall and then do it again in the spring. So he really wants to launch in Phoenix. And I know Kimber's been helpful with that pipeline, possibility. We also got him connected with the Native American liaisons at the community colleges too. So Dee Dee Devine, who's on our advisory board. So she provided all that information. I passed it along to Cedric. So and the folks at because you got the TO school that's as part of their campus. So, because we have our demographic is different. We've got a lot of Native American folks here too. So if there's a way that we can, have a combination, that would be that would be great.
So Mark, how
Yeah.
can I help?
Well, you're going to end up being a mentor is how you're going to
Right.
help them. So, but
Absolutely.
you know, it's interesting to me because we have 3 separate organizations on the call here, and I mean, how do we collectively make sure that this works? My greatest fear is there's a lot to do between now and the start of the school year to get people signed up, to get them to be participants. And we got to get the message out, right? So a tree falls in the woods and nobody hears it is my biggest fear. And that's my fear with Grambling. And they're driving me nuts because they, you know, it's like, can I have some sort of webinar, some sort of information sessions? Can I get, well, you know, we'll check to see if there's any faculty members with summer courses that would mention this to their students. I'm like, don't you have connection to all of your students, regardless of whether they're in school right now or not? Can we reach out to them? How do we get some awareness? How do we connect with them? I know school's out, but I'll send an email to every one of our students. I don't care what time of the year it is. So that's my biggest fear, is our inability to pull the teams together and be successful.
Well, I know in our last conversations with Cedric that he has his team are already, because he's presented to our advisory board in March. And at that time, he said that his team folks are already reaching out to folks here, and they're using LinkedIn also. And they were kind of doing what they normally do in the different markets that they've been in. But we tried to supplement that with Dee Dee's contacts. So I gave him, I sent him all the names and their contact information. And then so like Lorenzo, the folks you're working with in South Phoenix, if you can send all that, because I know like Kimber and Dominique have Cedric's contact information also. So you could just send it to him directly. But Joe, from our standpoint, Gary Lindhart and Joe are doing the fundraising, and
That's
they're
awesome.
pretty much on point with
How much are they trying to
with
raise?
Cedric.
I think they're trying to raise 75,000.
So 75,000, is that fund the program, the students to their scholarships? Is that some of that goes to scholarships?
Yeah, because they're paid. The students are paid, and it's pretty intense.
Oh, they're
for them
paid
do it.
to attend?
Yeah, they get a
trained.
A
$500.
stipend,
I think
That's
they
awesome.
get a $500 a month stipend.
some kind of stipend or whatever, but it's like a team to do a team of, I think it's 20 students in the fall.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
super
exciting. It's exciting.
Really fascinating. Yeah.
Well, it's not talk, it's action.
Yeah.
And it's really robust action, and that's terrific.
It was
Well, and I have
exciting to me when I first read about the program. I was like, well, this is interesting, but he's just putting people into corporations. But I think I see why. He's just needing to flood the industry with talent, and they have the resources. They're the means to the end. And there's a lot of, I mean, Mark, I tell your students that quite often when they ask what you do, and I just say, any experience, but really go work for big companies, because look at his track was that way too. Like you get exposed to, like he did at Carlisle, like I was at Kitchell. Those are valuable. If you don't have that perspective, then you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So I understand now and support his mode.
I had an opportunity, this was even before, maybe it was earlier in March, I think, of participating as a guest on one of their presentation, their pitch day that they did. And it was in New York. So it was, and the folks that were on there, so it was all the students, who were in the program. And then these big real estate guys who were the mentors and the panel of judges for this stuff. I am not kidding you. And Mark, no offense to the MRED program, but this was next level. These
Oh, I'm sure.
These guys were, these students, it was unbelievable. I was blown away. I was blown away by their presentations and their pitches.
Awesome.
So Dominique needs to get going, and he's worried if he hangs up that it's going to disconnect. I think I'm co-host.
I saw the host. It said you were the host.
I was going to send a quick farewell in the chat. This was a pleasure, working and organizing this whole entire series with you all. And I know each of you have been there from the jump or, midway through. And it's been insightful for me too, as a man of color, to hear the different perspectives and, different driving forces behind a lot of our guests and those who have joined us on this journey. But I look forward to staying connected with you guys. You'll see LinkedIn requests if I don't already have them out. Guys. I'll let you guys continue this organizing.
All right, Dominique, good luck with
Thanks,
luck,
Dominique.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Lorenzo. You guys have a good
Wow.
Keep growing.